On Cuba with Florida in its sights.
And we have got some cooler nights ahead of us as a fall-like pattern settles in. The latest coming up.
And how you can go green and still keep the old family ride.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
The Bourbon County Sheriff needs your help finding a person of interest in connection with a felony pursuit over the weekend. This is KOAM News at Noon. I'm Tanya Bach. Topping our first 7 minutes, authorities are warning residents to be on the lookout for Terence Scott Jr. He's 6'6" and about 280 pounds. According to the sheriff, Scott has an extensive record and should be considered armed and dangerous. Following the chase, officers found both narcotics and firearms in the vehicle he was riding in. If you see Scott, call 911. Do not approach him. It's finally starting to feel like fall, at least in the mornings. Chris Warner joins us with a first look at the forecast.
That's kind of where fall is going to be limited over the next several days as to the morning hours as we'll warm up through the afternoon. Skywatch Storm Tracker is clear and it is going to remain that way for quite some time. However, as Tanya mentioned, Hurricane Ian, as you may recall on our morning show, it went to hurricane strength in the latest update live during our show this morning. You can see it continuing to track on off to roughly the northwest, but it'll begin to turn more northerly as the day progresses. Take a look at temperatures though right now. Now these temperatures are fairly fall-like, but we are going to start to warm up. We had 72 Iola, 73 Fort Scott and Lamar, 75 in Carthage, and 75 in Joplin here at the noon hour. As we go through the rest of the day, we're going to steady out around 75. We're still going to warm up and then start to come back down. We're looking at a high of 81 degrees under partly cloudy skies. And then the latest on Hurricane Ian right now. This is where it is at, officially just off of Cuba. Winds are at the latest advisory around 80 miles an hour. Again, it's moving roughly northwest at 13, but it will start to shift course. And then this is what its course is expected to do. And not only will it shift course and curve back toward Florida, but it could reach Category 4 strength. We're talking major hurricane strength, winds of 140 plus and gusts of around 165 miles an hour. As it approaches the Florida coast, Tampa right now is one of the major areas that is in a place of concern. Now you can see it doesn't make landfall until it's much further north of Florida, not officially making landfall, but you can see it gets close enough to Tampa that high storm surge, flooding, wind, and tornadoes all a concern. And of course, Tanya Bach right now having the latest on Hurricane Ian as it continues to track toward Florida.
That's right, Chris. Hurricane Ian is expected to slam into Florida in the middle of the week, and there's already a state of emergency there. This comes after Fiona caused historic damage in Canada's Atlantic provinces over the weekend, even though it had weakened to a post-tropical cyclone. Omar Villafranca is in Clearwater, Florida, where Ian could make landfall.
Heavy rain and wind in western Cuba late Sunday brought a preview of what's to come from Hurricane Ian. A week after Hurricane Fiona ripped through the Caribbean, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a long road to recovery. On Saturday, a weakened Fiona slammed Canada's east coast, where extreme storm surge and flooding swept some buildings right off their foundations. More than 500,000 people lost power. At least one person died.
Absolute chaos, to put it simply. It's the most surreal experience of my life. Never seen anything like it.
Make preparations now.
Here in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency ahead of Hurricane Ian's landfall later this week. Some people packed sandbags as nervous anticipation led to long lines for gas, packed grocery stores, and empty shelves.
I'm trying to get water, but it's not too much at this moment.
Ian's impending arrival also prompted NASA to call off its moonbound Artemis launch for a third time, rescheduling for October 2nd.
President Biden has already approved emergency aid for Florida. We are expecting hurricane force winds later on this week and a lot of water. Storm surge 7 to 8 feet and rain in some places 6 to 12 inches. Omar Villafranca, CBS News, Clearwater, Florida.
Well, Italy is about to see the nation's most right-wing government since World War II. Giorgia Meloni, leader of the Brothers of Italy party, is in line to become prime minister. The conservative superstar fiercely opposes adoptions and surrogacy for same-sex couples. NASA will shift into planet Earth defense mode tonight with a mission that is part science and part science fiction. A spacecraft will complete a 10-month flight through the solar system and intentionally collide with a harmless asteroid. As Mark Strassman shows us, it's just a test for a potential real threat far into the future.
And liftoff of the Falcon 9 and DART.
Back in November, NASA launched Earth's first planetary defense mission called DART.
So far, everything's looking good.
The first, unless you include Hollywood. In the 1998 sci-fi thriller Armageddon, our planet's in big trouble. The bullseye for a Texas-sized asteroid.
The United States government just asked us to save the world.
Earth's only defense, Bruce Willis.
You're going to remote detonate the bomb. Well, I'm the real Bruce Willis.
You are. Well, sort of. Lindley Johnson's job title with NASA, Planetary Defense Officer, finding asteroids in our solar system before they find us. More than 27,000 near-Earth asteroids, seen here in blue, have been identified so far. About 10,000 of them look large enough to cause damage if they struck Earth. As it now stands, how vulnerable is the Earth to one of these objects?
To a large object, there's currently nothing to stop it.
Which brings us back to DART, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test.
DART is a spacecraft that's purposely going to crash into an asteroid.
Planetary scientist Nancy Chabot leads the DART coordination team. Chabot showed us tonight's test target, a harmless double asteroid nearly 7 million miles away.
The DART spacecraft is going to come in at 15,000 miles per hour and hit it pretty much head on here.
That impact could slow this smaller asteroid's orbit by about 1%, enough to make a hypothetical threat miss Earth.
Small nudge changes its position over time so that the Earth and the asteroid wouldn't be on a future collision course.
No known asteroid of size threatens Earth for at least the next 100 years. A good thing. No one knows whether DART will work. Plan B? Hollywood has some ideas.
The two halves are going to miss us by 400 miles.
Mark Strassman, Laurel, Maryland.
Only time will tell. That's a look at today's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Up next on KOAM News at noon, classic gas guzzlers can now get a modern-day makeover. We look at the trend that's charging up across the nation. And later, we're making a tasty stovetop roast in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen. Automakers are ramping up production of new electric vehicles, but now some classic gas guzzlers can get a modern-day makeover. Chris Van Cleve reports.
This is not your grandpa's 1978 Ford pickup.
Try that acceleration. Whoa! Yeah.
This F100 is completely electric.
The motors are much smaller than the engine, so they're slung really low in the vehicle.
A 44-year-old classic now powered by a brand new electric motor.
You're basically taking out all the innards and putting in something new.
Right.
Taking it from about 150 horsepower to almost 500. Allowing car buffs to go back to the future.
It basically makes everything about the vehicle better.
Darren Palmer is charged with electrifying Ford.
I imagine a traditionalist would look at this and go, but you're ruining a classic.
I would love them to try it.
And there are plenty who want to try it. Installing Ford's conversion kit called the Illuminator currently requires an experienced mechanic.
This is a Ford Illuminator E-Crate motor,
which is keeping Kirk Miller in Los Angeles very busy. His company, AEM EV, builds the electronics and hardware to turn a gas-powered car electric.
There's a massive shortage of conversion shops. The longer-term goal is to get it to where it's plug and play. I'm going to say, a year or so out minimum.
The Ford engine kit quickly sold out, but the market for electric conversions is just getting charged up. It's expected to surge to nearly $120 billion by 2031.
It goes.
As for driving this workhorse turned electric hot rod, it's smooth, it's fast, and it's quiet, which might just be the sound of the future. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Dearborn, Michigan.
Automakers believe the conversion could eventually be done at home for all kinds of older gas-powered vehicles. Something to consider. Still to come on the KOAM News at noon, Mr. Food.
In the mood for something warm and comforting? We're cooking up a pot roast today that might be one of the easiest recipes ever. So join us for lots of oohs and ahs.
But first, Chris Warner returns with your complete forecast.
We had a very fall-like start to our morning. We had temperatures dropping back into the upper 40s. The problem is we haven't had a lot of rain, and we're not going to have a lot of rain, unfortunately. And that's why, as we were concerned, the drought situation is still in dire straits, as we have a good chunk of southeast Kansas, parts of northern Oklahoma, now in the exceptional category. That's as high as it goes. And of course, that means the extreme has expanded as well. And unfortunately, our forecast has no rain in it for the next several days. It's good news if you're outdoors, you've got plans, but otherwise it's not good news for those who need the rain. Right now in Joplin, it's mild, it's fall-like, 75 degrees under clear skies across the area. And we look at temperatures around the region, and you can see they're not bad. It's a little warmer in some places, say Parsons and Neodesha, both at 78, 76 in Independence, 73 Lamar, a little cooler in Nevada, sitting at 72. We've been talking about it, and I just want to remind our allergy sufferers, I've got a couple of them at home. It's starting to look a little better. Pollen count down to a 6.2 out of 12 today and a 5.6 out of 12 tomorrow. And that's very good news for those who want to get outdoors and enjoy the weather that we are having. Still looking at a high of 81 right around here. Otherwise 75 at 2, 75 at 5, 65 by 8 o'clock with partly cloudy skies. And heading into the evening, we'll have mostly clear skies. We'll gradually drop back to a low of 53 tonight. So not bad overall in terms of temperatures. It's this future track that has the concerns with it, because as you can see, it does work. There's some rain on Wednesday out around, say, Dodge City, parts of southwestern Kansas, but that's not long-lived, and there's really nothing in our immediate areas. We've got high pressure in control, just keeping us dry, but keeping temperatures at least somewhat more tolerable than what they have been. Now, as we head into next week, we are looking at some rain chances on Tuesday. This is early Tuesday morning next week, but as you can see, they don't last very long either, unfortunately. And then we're watching additional rain chances possibly building in from the northeast on Wednesday. So the middle of next week is really our best chance of anything. Then we have Hurricane Ian that we've been talking about. Went to a Category 1 storm this morning. Latest advisory has it at 80-mile-an-hour winds, moving northwest at 14, but it will eventually begin to take a more northerly track. And as you can see, this is a very well-organized storm system as it starts to head off into the Gulf before it starts to circle back around toward Florida. So this is the track on Ian as to what is expected. Again, latest advisory, it's got it at 80-mile-an-hour winds, and it's going to track on the western side of Cuba, and after it passes Cuba, it's going to turn slightly northeasterly, and this is also when it's going to reach, or it's expected to reach, Category 4 strength. And that puts winds at 140 with gusts to 165. And if you're unfamiliar with the hurricane category system, there's only 5 categories. So this is a major hurricane off the coast of Florida. As it approaches the west coast of Florida, say around the Tampa area, it holds on to Category 3-2 strength. And even though it's not on land, you can see it's going to be close enough that any kind of storm surge, winds, heavy rain, all of that will still be impacting the Tampa area before it does make landfall and eventually dies out heading into Georgia. Our 7-day forecast, though, we've got mostly clear to partly cloudy skies all week long, with temperatures hovering in the 80s. We warm up by the weekend, and then our overnight lows, not bad, in the 50s, with the exception of Wednesday night, where we may cool off a little bit more into the upper 40s. So our overnight lows are actually right about where they should be, but our afternoon highs are still 5 to 8 degrees above normal for this time of year, but at least they're not pushing 100 like they were last week.
If we could only get a few rain chances.
Yeah, if we could get some rain chances on this forecast, it'd make it an even better one.
That's for sure. All right, thanks, Chris. We take this time to honor today's 4th-state hero, Sergeant Dustin Harrington in the U.S. Army. The Neosho, Missouri native joined the 735th MSB. He served a tour in Iraq in 2004. To Dustin Harrington, we thank you, our 4th-state hero. Looking to turn an affordable cut of meat into a melt-in-your-mouth dinner without a lot of work? Howard shows us how to make a stovetop roast in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen.
As the weather starts to cool down, we're on the lookout for recipes that are warm and comforting. And I can't think of anything better than a slow-cooked one-pot roast that is brimming with flavor. If that sounds inviting, check this out. We start off by searing a boneless beef pot roast in a heavy soup pot. Searing it locks in the juices as it cooks, which ensures that every bite will be as moist as can be. Once it's browned, we season it with a combo of off-the-shelf spices and top it with a bunch of onions and a large can of chopped tomatoes. Now we cover it, reduce the heat to low, and let it simmer for a couple hours until it's fork tender. This is the perfect dish to make on the weekend and serve all week long. When it's done, all that's left to do is cut it across the grain and call your family to the table. You can bet they'll be running to get their share. And as you dish this up, don't forget to spoon all that flavor-packed sauce over it. Whether you serve it with traditional mashed potatoes or a low-carb mashed cauliflower, you can't miss. The recipe for our easy stovetop roast is waiting for you on our website. I'm Howard in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found a warm and inviting way for you to say, ooh, it's so good.
We can find this recipe along with a lot more good food from the Mr. Food Test Kitchen online. Just go to our website at KOAMnewsnow.com. Here's a look at our 4-state market prices.
At Freeman, we don't just see patients, we see people.
All right, our 7-day forecast has us staying dry and warm. Mostly clear to partly cloudy skies. Temperatures in the 80s, so a bit above where they should be, but our overnight lows much more seasonable for this time of year as they hover around the lower to mid 50s.
I love it when we can say temperatures in the 80s are cool too.
Yeah.
Like that, like it feels cool outside.
It's fall, technically.
We're used to 100 degrees, yeah.
That's right.
All right, what do we have coming up tonight at 5?
Well, at 5, healthcare providers say the United States is facing a crisis in maternal and prenatal care. In Health Watch, we're going to learn more about a bipartisan bill introduced in Congress that could help. Plus, local health officials are gearing up for flu season. We're going to hear from the Newton County Health Department about their plans to tackle the flu. And Access Family Care Mobile Unit is on Crowder College today, the campus for tuberculosis. Stay with us. CBS or KOAM News at 5.
All right, thank you, Dallin. Thanks for joining us for KOAM News at noon. We'll see you right back here at 5 o'clock.